Welcome to the Purity Pulse podcast, your go-to podcast for the natural health industry and everything Purity Life. I'm Julie Drapeau.
And I'm Erin Macklin.
And today we're going to go through our weekly check-in, what's new to Purity Life, and also we'll have an interview with Stacey Kravitz from UNFI.
Yeah. So you're going back to New York shortly, yes?
Yes. I'm laughing because I absolutely love New York, and I would say it wasn't expected, but I loved so much my first trip for my sister's birthday.
That's right, because you just took your sister there for a few days.
Yeah, so I decided to take Matthew on the same trip, minus being hit by a bike. So let's give you a little bit of a background here.
Yes, please do.
I was just talking actually with Serge earlier, saying that for people who don't like big cities, often it's because you use, transit or Uber or cab, and then you feel like so overwhelmed because, don't get me wrong, Times Square is full of light and full of excitement, and, it's really everything on steroid, and it's really 24/7.
Right.
Where if you want to really discover New York, you have to walk. Yeah. Like every day with my sister, we walked 15K a day.
Yeah.
And
that's a lot.
But that's really how you get out of Times Square.
Right.
Great to see, once. But everything is sort of around that.
Mm-hmm. Were you staying right close to Times Square then?
We were right into Times Square, but we stayed, we'll say, 15 minutes in Times Square.
Yeah.
So my sister can see all the big screen and everything. But I mean, from the financial district to see where John Lennon, passed or got killed, the parks, like all of those beautiful areas and the cafes and everything, it's absolutely fantastic. Yeah. So, and Broadway, I mean, you can't, even if you're not a big theater person, going there, you discover so much talents.
Yeah.
You can be in a restaurant in New York and somebody will start singing and you would think that, you need to be on record. Like, I mean, this is fabulous.
Yeah. It's where the people are.
That's exactly. And if you like winter, the big tree and the Christmas time. So it is beautiful. But the little thing that happened to me that was kind
you
of...
got hit.
Yeah. So we're, finishing a CrossFit class, my sister's first CrossFit class. She didn't know she would do that on her birthday, but hey, I wanted her to try it.
Julie's your sister.
Exactly. We were walking back to the hotel because I had a meeting. And so we grabbed a sandwich quickly. And then as we're walking, I realized that, oh my God, I forgot my coat. But I need to get to that meeting. So I said, okay, let's turn around. We'll have time. Let's walk fast. And it's at the rush hour. Like there's tons of people. Like you have to walk in the same direction as everybody. And so we're just waiting to cross the street. And then it's absolutely our time to go. And I even wait a couple of seconds in New York, even though everybody walks, I just wait a second in case because there's a lot of bikes there. So I took a second, but then as I'm going to make my step, I turn around and I see that electric bike coming a full speed.
Right.
But in my head,
those bikes can go fast.
Oh my God. And they're bigger. Like it's not just like a small bike. There's like that little engine that is there. And I see in the guy's eyes, and listen, that happened really quick, but I saw in his eyes, there's no way he's not turning. He's just keep going. So I will be hit. So I just braced myself and I turned quickly, and there was that little older women, all frail. And I said, there's no way you can hit her. So let's stand strong here. And he just went into me.
Just barreled right into me.
Yeah. Just,
Did you fall over?
No. I just, it's like he hit the brick wall and then he kept going and I kept going.
That is Julie Drapeau.
But it just happened so fast. It's crazy that, most people would think about a car accident, but being hit by a bike, I never thought that would happen in my life.
Yeah, you could get really, really hurt.
And
yet here you are.
Surrounded with tons of people. But anyway, going back to New York and going back there, I'm actually going to do a very cool training. So there's that lady on Instagram that she was an ex-model, but she shows people how to, the gesture, confidence, and when you're in meetings, how to use your hand, what not to do, how to enter a room, all of those tips and tricks.
Yeah.
So I want to learn that to bring it back to the team as well after. So that's the why also behind the second trip there. Have you ever been?
No.
No?
No.
Is there something like is that a place that you would be interested or?
I think so. Yeah. Yeah. Especially hearing you and your experiences and whatnot. It does sound very interesting.
Yeah. It's absolutely a cool, quick trip to do. You can go there, and from here it's not that super far, and you can go just a couple of days.
Yeah.
4 days. That's enough.
Yeah.
And you just get there, get good shows, and just walk.
You saw a couple shows, like Broadway shows too?
My favorite was Michael Jackson.
Yeah.
That was the best show I've ever seen from all the shows I've ever seen.
Really?
Yes.
It goes through his life, right?
It goes through his life, and there's that cutest little boy of between, I would say, max 9 years old, with his little jeans and his afro coming, and he was so happy to be there.
Yeah.
You just looked at him, and it's like, my God, he's done that all his life, which is, he's 9 years old. And his voice was on point. So, make sure to go.
Yeah.
It's an absolute fun.
Don't get hit by a bike.
Yeah, exactly.
So thanks so much for coming today, Stacey. We're really excited to have you.
I'm thrilled to be here.
Yes, thank you. We're exactly excited, and we know you have a very busy schedule, but we're wanting to have you on the podcast to talk about your leadership experience and also what you do out there in empowering women. So we've listened to a lot of the other podcasts that you've done with your great experience. So we think that you're really one of the leader out there in helping women. So we wanted to share that with our audience. So thank you.
I know in particular you've done a lot of work with the Next Up organization. Can you tell us a little bit about what that is and what your involvement is there?
Yeah, it's less so than it once was.
Okay.
But I go back to, I'll date myself. I go back to 2008 when I experienced what was then the Network for Executive Women. When I was working for Kraft Foods at the time, we had a huge women's community group. So similar to types of DE&I work that goes on in industries today, I was very integral within those groups at Kraft. And we went to this national summit that they hold every year, and they've been doing this forever. And usually large CPG companies and retailers in the U.S. were involved in it. Well, we were so excited about it. There was a group of about 15 salespeople that had gone down, women, along with HR, and we were so excited about the whole experience. We thought, oh my God, this has to come to Canada.
Right.
And so that was like 2008. Between 2008 and 2010, I worked really hard with people at Kraft and within the industry to bring the Network for Executive Women, which is now Next Up, to Canada. And so we officially launched in 2010, and I was on the executive committee then, leading the mentoring group, which is where I'm still involved today. So UNFI Canada is a sponsor of Next Up, and we participate. And Ali Davies, who's our head of sales, she leads the mentoring group for them, as part of the executive committee. And so that's how we stay involved with it today. And it's just, they put on some really great events for women, but it's not just for women. It really does include men. So men can be members, and they can join, and they mentor. They sit as part of mentoring. Actually, I am hooked up with a male mentee from Next Up right now as I participate with that. So I really love to mentor in general, and that's a passion of mine. And so that's why I stay participated in that. And my team is a member, and I will give a little plug for Next Up because it's really only $200 US to join. So that's $230, $240, Canadian. So organizations can really get involved very easily, and they put on amazing events all year round that, bolster women, but also support allyship through male inclusion.
And that organization is those events or those talks are within Canada, or they US and Canada as well? Like if you sign up in Canada, your membership, you can go to events in the US, or it's really separated that way?
It's separated in this sense. You're part of the national organization, which is now North American. Next Up in the US has many chapters, right? Because they're based out of one. So they'll have a chapter in wherever a chapter wants to open.
Right.
So let's say a head office is in Arkansas of Walmart. I'm going to make it up. And Walmart's a member. UNFI is a member in the US of the broader organization and supports it through regional events. So if UNFI Canada wants to sponsor the Toronto chapter, which is what we do, then we can do that. So that's how they branch out and get everybody, and everybody gets involved by their region. And so Canada's a region for them, like it typically is for the US.
And anybody can join.
Yes.
Oh,
anybody can join.
We see that you've done a lot of women support at UNFI. We've seen a lot of women getting in those leadership role, and we think that you had a bit of an influence behind that. What inspired you, or to help women and grow into a leadership position?
Yeah, it's funny. I think it's a more natural occurrence versus an overt occurrence for me to do that. It's not something I set out to actually accomplish. Do I like that it's happened? Yes. Okay. I think, it's just been how I've grown up in the industry. So I've been in the industry, we're coming on 30 years, like in the food and beverage world, if you will. And as I think about those almost 30 years, when I started, it was a very, very male-dominated. Yeah. I worked for a jewelry company in the U.S. before I went back to craft for 2 years as a area supervisor. And what I was doing was Walmart was getting big in Canada in the mid-90s, and this company was trying to get in with their jewelry line, in the costume jewelry section. And so I had a set of merchandisers. It was a really cool job, and I really liked it. And I had all of Quebec and the Maritimes as my territory. Okay. And so it was a really interesting, and it was an all-female organization. All female.
At this time? Wow.
Yeah, all female. They were selling jewelry at Walmart part-time. So your role was a very part-time job. Not the area supervisors, but all the people who worked for you were part-time merchandisers. So you were managing kind of like a broker type of
model.
So it was a foray into working with a whole female, very early in my career, if you will.
Yeah.
And so I think that kind of connected with me, the relationships I created. And I only did it for 2 years. My husband and I moved to Toronto from Montreal, and that's when I joined Craft. I had worked for Craft as a kid, summer student, all the rest of it. And so I started as a rep at Craft. Yeah. And very male dominated in the grocery industry. Like, think about it, the mid-90s.
Yes.
It was, yes.
The dichotomy from what you were coming from into that must have been just jarring.
It was, and it was scary too, because I was in a new city. I was young. I was, impressionable. It was tough. But I moved up, and I became an account manager, and I moved through progressive sales roles, but always very male dominated. I was very fortunate though. In that year that I joined Craft, shortly thereafter, there was a ton of women starting at the sales rep level. And it's funny, like how I'm talking about this right now, because 15 of us actually stayed close all these years. Wow. And they're all coming to my house on Friday.
Oh, that's wow.
Yeah, because we used to do this gourmet
reunion
club,
kind of,
and it was a way we connected as women very early in our careers. We were all really young, newly getting married. I can't believe some of their kids are going to university. Like when I met them, they were just getting married, and now we're getting together after a few. Anyway. My point is that, so I always found the influences within my peer set as I was growing up in the organization. And I think that's what influenced me, is that, God, we don't have a seat at the table. And I was I was fortunate enough to be generally always the first.
Right.
And so, as I got promoted, I would be the first in a team of, whatever it was, sales planning managers or whatever role I was taking on next. And then when I became a VP at Craft, which was a very big deal, I was, I spent 10 years there. Yeah. The first 5 years, I was the only female at the table.
Wow.
And
that's tough.
It was, and in this industry, in the grocery industry, and less so in the natural organic space, I'd say.
Yeah, it's a bit softer.
But in the CPG, hardcore food and beverage, it still is. Like if you go to any of those big events.
Boys club a little bit, right? So, wow.
And so, and I managed to create really good relationships through my customers, which I think was helpful. Because I really never
give you support a bit, because it's so tough on one side that at least you have that support. You feel that brings up your confidence.
Exactly.
I would think,
people in your corner.
And the influence I had from those males was always positive. Less so my peer group, but what I found, the customers in particular, those male influences were very. I hate to say it, but it was like older brother. Kind of.
Oh,
you know, like I always felt as though we created relationships where they wanted, like they respected me, they trusted me, and they knew that they could go tough with me, but also would be fair. And
they
so
wanted
I
you to
think,
win.
And I didn't get that same kind of feeling, you know, in my peer set, right? Because it was very competitive, and more
of a threat. You were more of a threat because you were the different one. And I mean, if you made it there in the group, because you were a tough cookie, you made it, right? So they kind of, and they don't know what to do with a woman sitting at their table where it's all men's conversation.
Yeah.
That's very cool, very interesting.
Yeah, so
you noted that in a lot of those situations you were the first one to kind of break through that barrier. Do you think it was something in particular that you were doing, or something about your process that was letting you become that kind of first person to break through?
I don't know if it was a female thing. I think ambition has a lot to do with it. So I wouldn't put gender in front of that. I was very, I knew from a very young age I wanted to lead. And I knew when I started I've always wanted more. And I think a lot of women don't always know what it is that they want. And a lot of people are conflicted. I have never been conflicted.
Right.
Pretty straightforward and driven, right?
Yeah, I'm driven. And I know a lot of women like that. And I know a lot of women who are not like that, And,
or maybe don't feel comfortable being like that, or don't feel like that's allowed for them.
Yeah, or they haven't figured out what their true passion is.
Yes.
And I think, even me sometimes, is this really what I'm passionate about? Am I, and at every stage of my life, like every 5 to 10 years, like you grow,
renew yourself.
You learn. Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I wouldn't say, but I think ambition is what drove me to be where I wanted to be.
Right.
In that male group, is there, I've heard you saying in another podcast that you had somebody that sort of helped you out in a way. Was there anybody or situation that at least you got a little, let's keep doing, or put you in the right direction to help you to survive in this environment?
And they were men, believe it or not.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like it wasn't female empowerment. I got a lot of my female empowerment from women that I watched lead.
Okay.
So I was very fortunate to have someone like Irene Rosenfeld, who led Kraft for many years, to just watch how she led, have the opportunity to present to her and things like that. So for me, that was kind of how I got that female. But I will tell you about one time where I think my career was taking a nosedive, quite frankly, and it was because I took on a job that I really didn't want, to be honest. And I took it because everyone was promising you the next big job, because you take this and you'll be this.
That's a step to, yes.
Exactly. But then I never really focused on the job at hand, which was, I was senior manager of sales strategy. I didn't like working by myself. I didn't like not calling on the customer. I could have wrapped my arms around that job a little bit better than I did.
Right.
And so I wasn't behaving all that well, and nobody was giving me any feedback. My manager wasn't really good at giving feedback. And what you might have heard me say is that I'm really good if you tell me what's wrong.
Right.
And I can't work for somebody who's not giving me feedback.
Yeah.
I would argue at that time wouldn't have been ready to. So maybe the person didn't want to provide it because
they felt your vibe of
she's going to lose.
I'm strong. Yeah, exactly.
When I didn't get a promotion that I was expecting to get.
Yeah.
I went to talk to somebody more senior who just hit me right between the eyes and said, "Hey, Stacey, listen, you didn't really hit it out of the park in this role. You didn't seem,
engaged
engaged is a good word." And and I was like, "Oh, You know, it's kind of like, well, at least somebody told me.
Yeah.
Like, you know, and it's like, okay, you know, and it's not so bad. I can fix this. Like, this isn't a terrible thing. It's just a lesson to be learned.
Yeah.
And at that particular time, I went back to do a role I had done a million times, and I wasn't thrilled about doing that. But you know what? It was back in the customer viewpoint, and I you know, it was more up my
your sweet
alley.
spot. Yeah.
And then a male leader at the time, he was the head of a separate division within Kraft that eventually got sold, came to me and he says, I don't have a promotion for you, but I do have an open position that was actually back in Quebec. So I actually moved back to Montreal for a year.
We all do that for some reason. I did that many times. It's like, that's a trend. Like when you have Quebec in your blood, you're going back.
You go back, exactly, which was a super amazing experience because I got to manage a different business unit and I got to fix something. And I actually, ironically, I always say things happen for a reason. My father got very sick and he was in Montreal and I ended up, you know, and he passed away while I was there, but I had a year with him that I would never have had. I got to take care of him. And ironically, when he passed, like really after I finished settling everything, they offered me a promotion back in
to move back.
So you
that's
know,
life, huh? Just right. Wow.
Yeah. So that's another piece of my leadership is I never look at a problem anymore. I used to, and I think that's how I de-stress myself a little. Is you always look at what you're facing in the moment, no matter how bad it is. You got to know that that's happening to you for a reason. And what are you going to get out of it? Like, what are you going to get out of that moment in time? And so that you can not stress about it and move on because everything's better in the end.
Yes.
So
it's funny you say that. We just had a conversation earlier about that, right? That if you get, you know, stuck in the moment and frustrated, and it's just like even create more stress instead of saying, hey, there's a reason for this. Let's make it work the way it is. And just like you said with your father, I mean, you could have thought that, I have to go back and take that job and this, but then this happened and you were there. Yeah. So it's, we learned that with years. It takes a couple of years to put that under, especially when we're very ambitious, where it's like yesterday and no, I want this way, right?
Exactly.
So.
In all of your work, now you kind of said it happened more organically, but the empowering women, what sorts of challenges did you face?
I think for me, most of the challenges I'll go back to, is really trying to understand what the person wanted. Right. You know, and I'm learning a little bit. I'm studying right now to become an executive coach, and I'm learning a little bit about myself in that study. Believe it or not,
it's in the process.
Yes, exactly. And it's around, you know, giving advice. There's this really cool TED talk about that's called Advice Monster. I really encourage you to listen to it.
Make a note of that.
It's and what he says is, don't trap yourself in giving advice. Listen more openly and let people make the decision. And so I think I spend a lot of time telling people what I think. Right. And then you convince yourself that what you think is right. Right. And then you disempower the person that is actually the one who's trying to figure out what they want. Right. It's not up to you. Just because you had an experience doesn't mean that the person you're,
Absolutely.
you know.
It's not the same lens.
So I think for me, that has been the challenge that I wasn't aware of. Right. You know, as I was growing, like as I was developing as a leader, I think. And I noticed by just changing, not giving an opinion, but asking a question instead.
That changed.
It's unbelievable what you hear from people.
Yeah, and giving them more space to kind of continue the,
Yeah, exactly. So I think it's, the challenge for me would have been making sure that I truly understand and be more curious about what empowers people.
Yeah. I think that can be very hard as a coach, because so often you have this perspective of someone, you're like, this is the spot, like your sweet spot is here and you can grow here, and you want to kind of help that person and give that person a push along. But you're right, that's entirely from your own perspective, which may not be exactly what that person wants or where they actually will excel in the end.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, you never know the background really of where they are sitting in their head at the moment. And if you give them always the answers to everything, they don't get engaged as much in it.
Yeah.
Right?
It's exactly
They're saying yes to your face, but then
yeah, but I don't know if that's going to work for me. And I think about when people have given me advice, well, I could have thought about myself. You know, you almost feel like, oh, you don't think I'm smart enough? You know, like you get in your own
diminished
head.
a bit. Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
It's so much more valuable when you get there yourself.
You're
so
proud.
being able to lead somebody too.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Anyway.
What gets you still excited to do what you do?
My team.
Yes.
You know, like the people I work with are just awesome. And the company, quite frankly, you know, for as much as there's challenges, you know, I'm fortunate to work for a very, you know, large company with a lot of support. And they let me run my own show up here, you know, again, following, you know, whatever rules I have to follow. But for the most part, they trust my instincts. So I love that autonomy, quite frankly. And but it really is, it boils down to, I wake up every morning loving who I work with.
Yeah.
I love the industry.
Yeah.
I just came out of, I was saying to you, the board meeting, and I'm in my last year of 6 years on the board.
Wow.
So it's like my swan song. So
Yeah.
I can relax now. The last 4 years as vice chair and then chair, it's a lot of hours. It's a lot of commitment.
That's a lot of commitment.
And so, but it was a super amazing experience. I learned so much from the experience of itself.
Well, what an interesting time frame that you got to do it in, too.
Yes.
Yeah. So it was really, really good and just a great team. But I think about the people that are on the board with me and just how amazing they are. And they, you know, retailers, suppliers within our industry, and them trying to expand outside of it, trying to understand that, you know, while the natural organic space is, you know, kind of carved off to the side, there's this whole bigger part of the industry that's really important that we embrace.
Yes.
Absolutely. The world has changed greatly. The doors that we sell to and we do business with, as you know, that's, you know, as well. So it's good to have people from different part of the industry. And with you, I think that was very beneficial with all your other conventional experience and all of that, because that needs to be shared. Because the industry.
Well, you
has
can't
changed,
succeed.
Right?
Like
no.
I know, like I know what your business is. I understand it, and you know what it's like to deal when 5 retailers represent 88% of the food and beverage sales. You have to be in them.
You have to be in them.
And as a distributor, quite frankly, as you
absolutely.
know, they are their own wholesalers. Yeah. So what is your point of difference to them? You know, like
we speak the same language.
Yes.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And what else are there out of that? Because now you're going to save some time from not being in the CHFA. Do you have other projects coming?
Well, as I said, I'm studying to become an executive coach.
Yes.
I'm doing that as a benefit to my organization at the start. So they're supporting me in doing that. So as I thought about my career, you know, you go through phases and what's next for me. Well, I love where I work. I love who I work with.
Yes.
I love the industry. So I want to stay within it. I was going to miss the board work. Yes and no, you know what I mean? But I wanted to do something more. And it's everything we're talking about. It's what do I take at this stage of my career and give back.
Share
so 2 areas. One is I want to volunteer more. So I've joined this girls e-mentoring. It's called GEM. And I've taken up a mentee through them. And so what GEM is they are based in Toronto. And they're a non-for-profit organization that mentors. They get a bunch of folks like myself, and they have cohorts every school year of grades 9 through 12 girls, helping them. They're from, marginalized groups that, where it might be that they have a difficult home life, or they have, parents who aren't from here, who have immigrated but don't know the school system, don't know how to plan for career.
Right.
And they pair these mentees with a mentor. So I started that in September.
There's a huge need for that. Absolutely.
And it's really rewarding. So I wanted to find some way to give back, but something I'm passionate about. about. Like I can pack food, I can do all those things, clean up the community. That's all great. But I really wanted to find time, and UNFI Canada, well, UNFI as a whole gives 16 hours of free time to volunteer at anything that is you're passionate about. And so, you know, I mean, that's CHFA is part of that, but I can do something. I wanted to give back. So that was one thing. And then I signed up to get certified as an executive coach. So that's a 28-week program. Nice. And I will plug that I am, until I get to 125 hours, my services are free. So if you're interested.
There you go. You've got the plug. Sign up.
Thank you. So, you know,
people know where to find you.
But that's where, and then I hope to be able to, you know, give back in the organization and work with HR in a broader way, North American wide, to be able to help support building programs at UNFI. And then, you know, maybe eventually I'll do something on my own. But for now, it's really more meant to be something I utilize at work.
Well, you're very inspiring, Stacey. I must say that, you know, we always see you on the show floor every year, but it's great to have had the chance to have you here and to feel that vibe of, you know, drive. I love that. Like, you know, when we feel people
you strike me as somebody who likes that, by the way.
That's why we like, you know, alike, you know, likes. And
I think it's a little bit the Quebec blend.
I was to say that, but yeah, let's say it together. Thank you so much. I think the industry really is lucky to have you, and the mentees that you will help out will definitely succeed, and that's going to give them a great help. So thank you for sharing that time with us.
Well, thank you for both of you for doing this, because I think it brings, you know, and I did listen to your podcast, so I wanted you to know that.
Great, thanks.
It really is a very enlightening and a great thing to do for our industry. So you guys should be really proud of that, because I think you've brought out a lot of great folks and, you know, great information.
Stories.
And I think it's just good to have things like this that are very, you know, intricate and part of the industry. So good for you guys.
Amazing. Appreciate that. Thanks. So what's new to Purity Life? It's Beck's broth. Have you heard?
I have, yes. I have tasted it, and I have some more here for myself to taste as well.
So the story behind the brand, most of the time brands will come to us. We have our portal, and then we go through the process, or we really go after a brand. But this one actually, Vanessa James, Matthew's daughter, was at a show in London where she lives, and she texted us to say, this brand is awesome. And she connected us with the brand, and we went through all the due diligence, and here it is. What is super exciting about that brand, other than the very cool packaging, right?
It is very nice packaging.
It's very fun. The product actually really hits a lot of trends.
Yeah. So it's bone broth.
Yes, bone broth. And then you have the protein in there as well because of the bone broth, right?
Yep.
So it's very easy to use. We have 3 different flavor. You have the mint chocolate, then we have the hot chocolate, and then the instant coffee.
Yes, and what I'm drinking is the matcha latte. So I had the hot chocolate at home this week, and it's really lovely. I usually don't like a really deep hot chocolate, but after tasting this, I'm like, maybe it's just because they're always so laden with sugars.
Yes.
And this one is not. It's a little bit sweet, but not very sweet, and it's a very rich chocolate.
Oh, that's good
really,
to hear that.
And this matcha is lovely as well.
Yes. For me, I tried the instant coffee. And what I liked about it compared to maybe other brands is, although there's a lot of that bone broth, which usually would kind of kill the taste of a good coffee because it would bring that saltiness to it.
Yeah.
It doesn't do that.
I don't know how she's doing it.
Well, that's when I tasted it, when Vanessa said, oh, you need to taste this. So she sent me a sample, and I was like, okay, you know, I'd love to try everything. I wasn't, you know, to have high expectation because I've tasted a lot of them. And I like coffee and bone broth separately, not together.
Yeah.
But the benefit of having both together is awesome because you have that protein and everything. And honestly, mixed really well, tastes really good. And again, the packaging is fun.
Yes.
Like you have the sort of that cow pattern on the box, and you have the little cow in the front. So they nailed it. I mean, on shelf, it stands out. So very, very good brand.
Yeah.
New ones.
Thanks so much for joining us for another episode. You can follow us on Instagram at Purity Life Health Products LP. I'm at Erin G. Macklin.
JD_Girl Power. And join us next week for a very special episode of the Purity Pulse podcast.